Good morning. My name is Bob St. Vrain. I'm here with my colleagues from the Archives Project at St. Louis U High. We're in the Ignatian Conference Room to review the last 10 years, the effort that we've put into building an archives for St. Louis U High. So I'd like to introduce and begin with Terry Donahue, who will speak to the beginnings of the archive effort.
So we had a 50th reunion in 2013, and as part of that project, if you will, we had a committee of gentlemen, several, I think all of whom were on that committee, along with other members of our class. And after the reunion was over, we did kind of a wrap-up meeting and just started to talk about, we had, many of our classmates came to us after the reunion and said, look, we're all retirement age, we're doctors, lawyers, dentists, whatever, and we have a lot of time on our hand, and we'd like to find some way, if there is any way, that we could give back to the school. We know the school would like our money, that's for sure, but we would like to give back to the school in some way that we could help bring the school to the next level because of all the experience we've gathered. So we said, well, all right, we probably need to talk to President Laughlin, and we looked around the room, and I was elected to go talk to Dave Laughlin. So I sat down with him a couple weeks after that and said just exactly what I said. We have alumni that want to go above just showing up for the reunion. We want to see what we can do to help bring the school along to another level. So he said, let me think about that. He got back with me probably 2-3 weeks later, and he said, you know, the thing I always have thought, this school is close to 200 years old then. There's a lot of history here that there's a story needs to be told, especially to the future, the current and future alumni of the school, in addition to their parents, in addition to the city of St. Louis. So he said, I'd really think it would be nice if we could put together a historical book on the school. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. Okay, so let me go back to my guys and see what we can do about that. So we all got back together again and said, this might be something we ought to give a shot at. This would be kind of cool. So we got back together and we agreed that that's what we're going to try to start on. So where do we start? Well, the history of the school rests up here, and it rests in the hallways of the school, in the closets, etc. So we said we need to gather, we need to have kind of an organizational meeting. So we got together in 2018, I think it was, to talk about how we go about gathering the material and who's going to produce the book, how it's going to be produced, et cetera. So we gathered in this very room, the Ignatian Conference Room, and we basically said, all right, where do we start? Well, the material that we were going to work with started really with, there's a room right around the corner from this camera where there was a lot of old material stored in there. And we opened, President Laughlin opened it up for us, and stored in there was a treasure trove of information about the founding of the school, the Backer family who basically funded the expansion of the school here on Oakland Avenue, to the point where we even had accounting records of Mr. Backer and the company that he ran, and his own personal financial records. I mean, we even had deeds to a silver mine that he owned. I mean, we thought, what did we run into? What does this have to do with the history of the school? Later we found out, but so we thought, okay, this is the start of it. So then what we did is we sat down. Later on, we started committing ourselves to meeting once. I think we started meeting once a week then also, and once we sat down and we started kind of determining how do we get to the records, where are the records, who are we going to help us find the records, what do we do, how do we organize it, how do we organize in terms of sports, extracurricular, how do we do all this, and the more we talked about it, the more we needed some way to catalog all this information. Well, guess what that led us to? It led us to the fact that this is an archive waiting to happen. The material that's contained in this building and in the heads of the alumni and the former staff of the school. That's where archives come from. And the school had really not done a very good job of keeping track or cataloging any of that. And so we just said, in order to write a book, we got to archive the material so that it can be researched and a book can be created from it. That's how the archive project got started. And we needed a place to store it because as we pulled stuff out of the various nooks and crannies from around the school, we had to have a place to store it. Well, this is where we started.
So the school decided that they would let us use the old teacher's lounge off the old cafeteria in the south wing. So basically what it had been used for in the last umpteen years was storage for various teachers. So there was a bunch of wood shelving in there and Chinese artifacts and different things from different people. T-shirts from 10 years ago, trophies, whatever, just a hodgepodge of stuff. So we moved in there and kind of organized the stuff on the shelves to make room for our stuff. And then as time went by and we started to catalog more things and get into, at least divide them into groups of this, that, and the other, put them in boxes, needed space on the shelves. We were able to move some of the stuff from the teachers over to the kitchen area next door to the teacher's lounge and then expand within there. Now, as we did this, then the school decided that this was for real and they came in and updated the teacher lounge and put carpeting on the floor for us, put a new ceiling in, cleaned it all up, and basically made it into a usable, workable, cleaner work facility for us all. We also, at that same time as we're learning about what to do and how to do archiving, which Lee will get into later, got the proper tools to do the archiving, the proper storage boxes, archival boxes, and things like that. So as we then started to go through the materials, it's like, as Terry alluded to, how do you divide this up? Divide and conquer, basically. So we started a list. It's like we got teachers and students and facilities and whatever, sports, and then how far do you fine tune all of that? And so as we went through and started to think about it, we developed a process and instructions on how to do all that and came up with lexicons, the words that would go into the database, and also the categories that everything would be divided into. So we've got a number of different things that have been developed over the years and ongoing, and our challenge every week was to find a new lexicon word to harass Lee with, so he'd have to update everything. But that aside, we continued to build the archives and then fine-tune the categories.
Want to talk about the forms, the forms that were developed over time, just like the various processing forms?
Okay. So over time, as we entered the data into the database, different things would require different information. So we developed database or forms for the paper materials, for the what other kind of materials?
Photos.
Art objects,
Artifacts.
artifacts and different things. So we would keep fine tuning all these until we got down to a point where we were very comfortable with what we had developed.
So in any case, we weren't archivists. None of us knew what we were really doing in the first place. So we went around to different archives. The first one was the Jesuit Archives. I met David Miros. For the Jesuit Archives at that time, he was using just a database called Access. So we started with that and made our forms so they would, could be used in an Access database. Also at the time, we were buying bankers boxes and plastic shells and everything else. And through Melissa Jones, we're told that Diane Everman, who was was an archivist with the Holocaust Museum, lived right across the street from the school. So we invited her over to tell us what we really needed to do. And she came over on a Saturday morning. spent about 4 hours with us, and told us we were doing everything wrong. So, the wrong kind of boxes, the wrong, we're doing this wrong, that wrong. So she told us what to do, what to order to do it right, and just make sure we had a Class A archives. We also visited several other museums, either, as a group or alone. We visited the Missouri Mercantile Library. We went to it's the research arm of the Missouri Museum, and several other places. And we started to find out that there were other ways to do this besides access. So we started researching, Terry and I did, researching what the various software packages out there were. And we kind of knocked out a couple of them right off the bat because we knew that they were too expensive for the school. After going to the Mercantile Library, we found out they used a program called Past Perfect. And it did everything we needed to do because we have art to catalog, we had objects, we had papers, we had all this, and Past Perfect would do it all. So we talked to the school, and they okayed us getting that software, gave us a computer and all that. Had been doing a lot of research and training, and so I found out that one of the first things you should do as an archive is have a mission statement and a collection policy. Mission statement being, what are you going to do? Why are you existing? And the collection policy just says, all right, if something comes in, do we keep it or don't we? Alumni are going to send a lot of stuff in. Some of it is stuff that only people in their class might know, or something that is esoteric and we don't really need it. So we started, but in any case, we started making up forms. We originally were making forms for the access. We reversed that and started making forms that we could use in Past Perfect. So we had a whole new set of forms come up. But Past Perfect, one of the things that they mentioned, there's a lexicon that's used for object names, and they suggested buying it's about that thick, book of the terms that archives and museums use. We also visited the Missouri History Museum, as I said. We went to the SLUH archives. SLUH, we were founded in 1818. At one point, the Jesuits took over what was called the St. Louis Academy. When they did, a lot of our history from St. Louis U High is collected in the St. Louis U archives. And we were trying to get some kind of idea of what they actually had and maybe some way to tie the two of them together. Other than that, I mean, we've all done a lot of training on various things, and it takes a lot of training to get this job done.
There was a lot to be learned, we found out. Plus, there were some added things we didn't anticipate. So after the first 2 years, we thought perhaps we aren't known. And so a couple of ideas that we came up with were, one, to publish what we were doing. What is the archives, so that everybody would know. And so 2 years later, in 2017, all of the archivists wrote an essay to go in the SLUH magazine. And each of us picked a topic and researched it and wrote the essay. And I think that began our first reaching out to alums and parents, grandparents, of that an archives even existed. So we began with that, and there were other publications. Marty wrote one about the path of separation from St. Louis University. And I know Terry wrote one, Men for Each Other, essays. So we were contributing to the SLUH magazine and trying to promulgate ourselves as an established archives. We also felt that maybe we weren't too well known to the faculty when Father Ian Gibbons invited us to address the faculty as a whole. Well, I accepted that challenge because I'm a former teacher myself, and so went to the faculty meeting, and I addressed them with Arma virumque cano, Troiae qui primus aboris. Anybody recognize these lines? As I surveyed the faculty, 2 hands went up. And I quickly said, I recognize the classics department is here this morning. So this led me to talk about curriculum over the years. I asked if anybody was sitting for a Latin oral exam at the conclusion of our 4 years here. And no one recognized that at all. So I pointed that out as the changes in curriculum, and that's what we would like to know from them, among other things, their courses, their backgrounds, their rewards. So we tried to get the faculty to participate more. Following that, we participated in a clean up and clean out campaign here at school, and that brought us a whole treasure trove of things that were found or ready to be discarded in the school. And we were very thankful for that. We needed to address alums as well, so we manned a booth at the bicentennial celebration and also manned one at a November open house. We also distributed one of our favorite handouts, the SLUH at 200 years, the Did You Know booklet, giving that out to alums as well. We constructed posters about different changes in the school over the decades and put those on display at the alum reunions. Also, members of our committee have served on the alumni board where they had a chance to promote our efforts at what we're doing.
I'm kind of a newcomer to the archive effort. I was continued to work for a while, and when I finally retired, I was getting a little bored at home, I guess, and some of my archive buddies suggested that I come down and work with the archives, and I guess you've already heard that it is pretty intricate. There's really a lot to archiving. It's not, you just don't walk in and put things in boxes. You've got to be able to find out where that box was, and it's got to be named correctly. So I was really kind of lost initially, and it took me a while to find out what was going on. I think initially I was pretty much of a gopher. I could move things around, and my back was still strong at that time, no longer, but that's primarily what I did. One of my big hobbies was photography, and we had a lot of things that, if you have a piece of paper that's part of your archive, it's easily fits into a box. If you've got something big, it's a little bit more difficult. So, one of the things that we had considered was to photograph some of these things and, put them online so people could look at them later on. And that became part of my job, was to photograph some of the trophies. Initially is what we started with. We had a huge trophy case that went from all the way across the width of the school, trophies that went back, 60, 70, 80 years. I set up a little photo booth that we put in a hallway down right as you go into the Jesuit wing. And we brought lights in, and we brought backgrounds, and we started at the west end of the trophy case and just took a trophy out and set it on its stand and photographed it. We tried to do it with with measurements so people could see with the size of the trophy. And I took the photographs, and Norm would list the trophy on a form that we had for each piece that goes into the archives. And we got to a stack of paper like that. And then after we did each trophy, we put it back in the trophy case in its original position. And we continued on this, and I think we got to about close to half of the trophy case, and then unbeknownst to us, they decided that they were going to move the trophies. So the trophies went someplace else, and they were just totally put into one big group. So unfortunately, we had no idea which trophies we had photographed and which needed to be photographed. And then the ones that we were able to figure out that were photographed, the administration decided that there was no reason to keep all of those trophies. So we went through and, the multiple trophies that were state championship trophies, those were the kind of ones we kept. But the appreciation scholarship trophies and, some of those other debate trophies and things like that were discarded. And so unfortunately that ended our photographing the trophies.
Would you talk about the art collection here in Norm's efforts to try and identify and catalog the extensive art collection, Dick?
Since I had my camera at the ready, that was mentioned that, I think very few of us had any idea what kind of a art collection St. Louis University High School had. One of our benefactors, Tim Drone, donated a vast majority of his art collection and some just amazing, beautiful pieces. Very expensive pieces were given to the school, but we've never had an art curator. So, as you walked around the school, there were pieces of art just randomly hung on the walls, and later on we found out that there were just a trove of beautiful artwork in a basement room sitting on a damp concrete floor. So we decided that it would serve the artwork and the school to know what we had. So we decided to try to scour the school and find all the different pieces. And they were just everywhere. They were in teachers' offices, they were in the Jesuit residence, and they were, a ton of them were in that storage room. We tried to photograph as many of those as we could, and we tried to correspond those with several different lists we had. We were given 2 or 3 different lists that described all of the artwork that we had been donated to us. Unfortunately, some of them were, one of the problems we ran into is one piece of art would be called Woman in Red, and another one describing the identical piece was Woman with Red Scarf. So we had different titles for the same piece of artwork. So it slowed us down a bit, but we tried to get as many as we could, although it got to the point where we just never totally completed it because they seemed to be moving around so much and it was hard to track them down.
All right, so as Dick mentioned, we had several different lists of what the artwork theoretically was in the building. And much of it started with the Tim Drone, a class of 65 alum. He donated a lot of art material, plus a lot of artifacts, old prehistoric things from China, from the Middle East, from all over the world, and things from like the World's Fair exhibition, you name it, it was part of the drone collection. So as we were trying to make sense of this and all these various lists, I put it on an Excel spreadsheet and tried to weave out the duplications and make sense of all of this. And it's still not done, but it's almost finished. but we've got well over 1,000 different line items on there at various prices, some of which are values, some of which we never heard of or saw in the time. Some were on display in the library, and some have recently appeared in this room, to our surprise. So anyway, we're trying to make sense of all of this, and the value of this art is substantial. Now, added to that, years ago, when Tim Drone first donated the materials, he says he wanted to see the students use it, have access to it, and perhaps there could be a museum of sorts or displays anywhere within the school, in the libraries, in a room somewhere, ongoing displays where things would rotate and students would be exposed to the various types of art. As time goes by, Dr. Robert Bannister, former principal, decided that that was a good idea, and he started to do his own list and his own additions to the drone donations. And that included the statuary in the chapels, some of the artwork or woodwork that was in the Ignatian. This was the former chapel of the Jesuits. All of this stuff is 100 years old at least. So added to that, plus other donations, Mrs. Backer's home apparently, after she passed, had some artwork that the school acquired, and not only paintings, but tables and chairs and other things. So he had added, Dr. Bannister had added to his list. So trying to get all this together and make sense of it all has been an ongoing project, and is still ongoing.
Before we switch, while we're on, Norm, would you talk about the development of various collections about some of the individuals, the camera's on you, about the collections that we decided to create, Jesuits, alumni, et cetera?
Well, yes. As you get into what do we collect and how do we do it? Let's take the term Jesuit. Father Houlihan is the ultimate example of this. He was a student here, class of 52. He was a what? Scholastic during our time here for 3 years. He then became a priest and came back here as a teacher. He came back here as a principal, and went to other schools, Regis in Denver, and various and sundry things that he had done in his life, and has come back to St. Louis U High in the later years. So we've got him, and how do you classify all of his accomplishments and everything else? So we have various levels of collections. And, whether you're a teacher, you're an alumnus, you're whatever. And the Backer family is another example. Mrs. Backer, we have her letters to the St. Louis University administration trying to set up her school for her boys with her husband's estate. And it took her a while to do this, and we have some interesting letters where she and one of her, I guess, confessor, she would be writing back and forth to him because the Jesuits were not forthcoming with all the things that she wanted done. And it took her 3.5 years of writing to the Jesuits to get her money to run her school. Which
physically and legally separate.
Physically and legally. So we have all these documents in her own handwriting, very nice handwriting. So we have all those in the collections, and the Backer collection, and various, we have sports collections, we have books written by alumni, all sorts of different things that the staff, accomplishments of the staff, accomplishments of the alumni. It's all part of the divide and conquer. How do we put it into the archives and make sense of it?
The first thing I did with this archiving is about a 20-page summary of how St. Louis U got from a little bitty house on downtown out onto Washington Avenue, out to Grand Avenue, to St. Louis U, what became St. Louis U High. And it was like 15, 20 pages, but it was a good summary that how it ended up being where it is. One of the main things I did is in the archive room, not critical, there's a tendency to not put books and archive things back where they belong. So we would have we would have stuff that belonged together, but it would be put back in the wrong box. Not the contents of the box, but the box would be put in the wrong place. And I spent a whole bunch of time putting things back where it made sense, so that we had like all the women's stuff together, all the different types of documentation. And these guys had done an unbelievable job of collecting and documenting all this stuff. Once I had written this long paper about how SLUH ended up going from a little bitty building to a high school, it was difficult to keep everything in order. That's mostly what I spent time doing afterwards, and it has been a rewarding effort. I mean, I feel real good about what we were able to accomplish over those, how many years? 5, 6 years?
10.
10 altogether.
10, 2015 to 2025.
Yeah, and enjoyable and rewarding.
Well, talk about your efforts to review all of the prep news and all of the yearbooks. You spent a lot of time, and then from that you created some very interesting vignettes that created another book.
Yeah, I had gone through every prep news, going all the way back to the beginning of the prep news, and created a little summary to try to make some sense out of it. And that was difficult. The other stuff was not difficult and more interesting, but putting it back together was not so much fun. And that's about it. It's like, I feel like we accomplished a lot, and hopefully the school will go forward.
Yeah, basically what Marty did was write a history of the first 150 years of the school. And in and of itself, it is a book and could be a book and should be a book. And we believe that every incoming freshman student should probably get a copy of it, either in a published form or on a flash drive or something, because it tells the story of St. Louis U High from 1818 to the first 150, through the first 150 years.
Cool.
Or I can add more.
Yeah.
So as Terry initially mentioned, the intent was for us perhaps to write a book for the 200th anniversary, which is what we worked on and which is Marty's book started to go towards. And as a result of that, the school decided, because of what St. Louis University was doing with their book, and we actually had interviewed the lady who was writing their book to see what she was writing about. And based on her subjects that she was writing in her book, the high school decided it was going to temper what we were writing and add a lot of Marty's parts to the book, but add a few more things, which they did. So we, in effect, Marty has contributed to the 200th year anniversary book, To God with Gratitude, that was published by St. Louis U High.
The teacher's lounge, when all the ratty sofas were taken out and things like that, and with our instruction by Diane Everman, by the professional archivist, we were able to obtain metal shelving, work tables, to learn all about preserving things, not using staples in anything. And we picked up utensils and tools that we needed to do our work of preserving the materials. Then the time came that we were outgrowing that. And so the next move was to Wise Avenue, where we are today, where we're known as the Wise Guys, I believe, by some, not by all. Special projects include things like starting collections, like Norm said. An extensive collection of the George and Anna Backer material is a great resource. If you want to know if the school is fully accredited, I can assure you it is, after reading all the accreditation reports over the years, and it's really gripping reading to go through accreditation reports. Only a former teacher could enjoy those. And other collections now involve the class collections that we have, where when we pick up material from any class, any graduating class, we now have a container for their material. Hopefully it'll serve them for their reunions, and maybe if they become volunteers in an archives. So special projects were always very, gave us a lot of work to do, and then we even discovered new collections. For instance, Dr. Ching-Ling Tai left us all of her things. So there's a great collection in her honor, and the Chinese teacher here at SLUH for a long time, as well as the Father Ralph Houlihan collection. Items like that have all been of big interest.
So as time goes by, and part of the reorganization within the school, and they needed to redo the old cafeteria and the teacher's lounge and the kitchen area into the Dill Center now. They provided us the house on Wise Avenue, 4936 Wise. And it's a 4-family flat divided into a flat,
Two apartments.
an apartment on the west side first floor and an apartment on the east side first floor with steps to the upper 2 apartments. So it's like 1 and 2 plus, I don't know what you'd call it. Anyway, we had the first floor on each side. And on the one side we had in the kitchen where we did the work, and the other 2 rooms, a middle room, let's say a dining room, and the front room is where the shelving was. And that's on the west side of the first floor. On the east side of the first floor is where we had shelving, where we would store most of which was sports and artifact material. And it came to be a collecting area for stuff to come in that you didn't know where to put it. Let's put it over there. And not only, we didn't do this, but people in the school would come in and we'd show up and there'd be new stuff there every week. Where did it come from? We don't know. What's it about? We never got a note. But anyway, persevere. So over time, we moved the files from the old teacher's lounge to Weiss Avenue and got it set up, and Marty kept everything in order. And going along pretty well there. When the school finally decided to recognize that these guys are going to be here for a while and they're doing good things, and we had been asking them to hire an archivist to kind of keep giving us guidance for the future. And so they hired a part-time archivist by the name of Emma Prince, and she kept us on the straight and narrow and added to what we should do here and what we should do there and keep us going in that direction.
And then she was replaced by,
So I want to go into Abby?
Yeah.
Sure. So Emma left us when she decided, this was kind of, she decided she was going to make, this was a good thing for schools to have archives. And she developed her own business, and Terry gave her some business acumen that he's acquired over the decades in the business world, and got her going on her business called Backlog. And as Emma moved on to her business, the school replaced Emma with a new archivist, Abby Metzler. So Abby is now a full-time hire by the school, part-time archivist, part-time librarian, and been a real asset, and will continue the work of the archives as we transition out of the school.
The last segment I want to talk about is the oral history project, which today is a good example of. Early on in our discussions of what archiving entailed and how history can be captured, we decided to start a program where we would film and interview various faculty members, staff members, alumni, and try and capture the various perspectives of these individuals, some of whom had very long tenures here at St. Louis U High, and capture the various changes that have occurred over the years. And that became the Oral History Project, and today is another example of that effort to keep the recording of faculty, staff members, coaches, alumni, and have that for posterity that can be reviewed and researched in the future.
This has been a labor of love over the last 10 years. And from the beginning, we had a lot of dreams for the archives and what it could do. One of which is just going around the school, we found things in storage that really didn't need to be, old records and stuff like that. Past Perfect will keep track of all that. So one of the things we first thought about was a retention schedule, which most companies have, tells you when to get rid of items. That now, the school now has a retention policy. Another one of our dreams was to get the students involved. When I came out of college with my degree in history, if I'd have known about archiving back then, I'd have become an archivist. So what we're hoping, and the school assures us now they're going to do, is get the students involved. They're going to bring them over, set up workstations, and have them help out with the archives. And hopefully some of them will get the bug to become an archivist. Another thing, Past Perfect, the company that runs that has offered to set up a website for us. And what I'd like to see is, and I've already put some stuff in there with photos and things, is to open up at least part of their archives to alumni. Maybe put a picture of their old football that they played with in a championship game. And a lot of other stuff that brings back memories for the alumni. And maybe even some of them that, for some reason or other, don't want to and be involved with SLUH. Maybe it'll get them a spark to come back and help the school. So hopefully all these things will come to pass, and we hope that the archive has a beautiful future.
I would simply like to give a shout out to our classmate, Frank Pulowski, who we could designate as Archivist Emeritus for his 60-plus years of recording sports history here at St. Louis U High. So thanks, Frank, for all of those years, all your contributions, and wish he could be with us today so that we could thank him, in person. But a great shout out to him. Thank you.
I just want to say a term, institutional memory. This building was built in 1924, opened, and to 2025, it's 101 years. This group goes back to 1959 when we first set foot in here. So that's 66 years ago. So just the archive group covers 2/3 of the institutional memory of this building and this school. Now, 3 of the archivists here had sons go to this school and cover another set of years. One of the gentlemen has his grandson here, and 2 more to follow after that. So the institutional memories hopefully has started kind of with the archives and will continue through the future with everything else. And we hope to see a lot more of alumni perhaps get involved and bring those same memories into the archives and into the institutional memory of the school.